Gonzaga has passed every test they've faced this season, but 3 days in the desert with $1 million on the line, that's a whole different ballgame.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, folks, we got a lot to get to today. We're breaking down the Players Era Festival. It starts on Monday. The action get going early in the morning if you are out on the West Coast. Tons of great basketball Monday and Tuesday. We're going to break down the event. We're going to talk about Gonzaga's known matchups against Alabama and Maryland. We're not going to get super in-depth. We will do that before those games Monday and Tuesday. We're going to take an overview at those two teams. The rest of the matchups, Gonzaga's likelihood of going 2-0, going 3-0, potentially winning the whole thing, and what that would mean for Mark Few's program and budget going forward. We got all that in the first two segments, and we're going to close out the show continuing an off-season series that has been put on hiatus for the last couple of weeks. But for those of you who are listening in the off-season, you'll know what we are talking about. Fun to bring this one back. All right, folks, we're going to start with a bit of an overview on the Players Era Festival for those who maybe need a refresher, as Gonzaga is joining this tournament for the first time. It is in its second year. It debuted last season, and it caused a lot of controversy, a lot of discourse around the college basketball space, because the Players Era Festival is an NIL-based event where if you are participating in the event, even if you lose every single game, you will get $1 million in NIL funds for your program just for participating. If you win the Players Era Festival, you will get an additional $1 million towards your program's NIL budget. This was done last year for the first time. It is going to be done again this year, as the event has already expanded to 18 teams. And the expectation, or the plan at least, for this event is that it will be 32 teams starting in 2026. For the record, Gonzaga, when they signed on for this year, they signed on for 3 years. So they are expected to participate this season, next season, and the season after that. Again, the NIL money, when it cleared the first time this event happened, so there was no issues there. And then after the House settlement happened this summer, there was some concern of, like, is this still going to be like allowable income for the schools to use? And they have worked out an agreement where that is not an issue. Certain schools are going to do it differently. If you have, over the allotted $20 million that you are allowed to spend on NIL from your program, that money then goes through the NIL kind of clearinghouse. If you don't have that money, which we're not expecting that Gonzaga is up to a full 20 million, then that money just goes towards the amount of money that you're allowed to spend on your student athletes. Again, event in its second season now, there's still some kind of kinks to be ironed out. I think the most obvious of those being the kind of lack of clarity around how the bracket is going to shake out after the first 2 days. We know Gonzaga's first two games. They will play Alabama on Monday at 6:30. They will play Maryland on Tuesday, also at 6:30. The opponents, the time, the TV, all of that, none of that changes whether Gonzaga beats Alabama by 20, beats them by 5, loses by 30. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens in that game. They will play Maryland on Tuesday. But after that Tuesday night game, really after all of the games are done, which I think the last tip on Tuesday is at 9 p.m. Pacific time, they will then bracket out the rest of the event based on your record. So if you go 2-0, you're going to play another 2-0 team most likely. But obviously with 18 teams, it's going to be imbalanced. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the second segment. But ultimately, it's an event where not knowing whether you're going to compete for a championship, even if you win your first two games, is a little strange. Like, Gonzaga could go 2-0 in these first two games and not be in the championship game. They could, in theory, not even be in the third place game. That would be a little surprising, but it's going to be based on a handful of things, including point differential, the number of points you scored, the number of points you allowed. But again, it's a little unfair that that doesn't account for the quality of your opponent. For example, Kansas is playing Syracuse and I believe Rutgers for their first two games, or sorry, Syracuse and Notre Dame. For Kansas, they may win those two games by a combined 25 points. Gonzaga might beat Maryland by 20 and only beat Alabama by 3. Does that mean that Kansas is going to get a better spot despite playing weaker teams? Hard to say. We don't know the full exactly how they're going to do that. They're also going to try to avoid matchups intra-conference. So like they might not want to put Kansas against Iowa State, therefore Gonzaga gets Iowa State. Like there's a lot of different things that could happen, but ultimately it feels like your odds of actually competing for the championship and the $1 million are sort of not entirely up to you. And I don't feel like that is particularly ideal and something that somebody's going to be unhappy on Wednesday morning or Tuesday late night when they find out what game they're in and they're either are or are not competing for a championship when they think they should. I can guarantee you that is going to happen, and we'll see if it spurns some changes to the future format of this event. We're going to, again, very quick talk about Alabama and Maryland here. We will get much more into these two teams early in the week next week. Gonzaga takes on Bama the 24th of November, 6:30 p.m. on TNT. Both of these games will be at the MGM Garden Grand Arena in Las Vegas. Bama's 3-1 on the year. They have played a ridiculous schedule. Their wins are against North Dakota, who is 310th at KenPom, but also St. John's at the Madison Square Garden. St. John's 16th at KenPom. They also beat Illinois in Chicago at the United Center. Illinois 7th at KenPom. They have one of the best resumes in college basketball. It would be the best had they beat Purdue, but they lost to Purdue at home. 87-80 was a very, very close game in that one. Bama's schedule is ridiculous. After this, they play Gonzaga and UNLV and then somebody else at the Players Era Festival. They also have Clemson, Arizona, and South Florida all on their non-conference schedule before getting into the SEC. Big shout out to Nate Oates. He is not afraid to schedule a tough non-conference slate. And as the coach of a program in the SEC, he doesn't have to do that, and he chooses to. And I think that should get some praise because not a lot of coaches are willing to do that. Currently, as I'm recording this, Alabama's 18th at KenPom. They are 9th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 35th in adjusted defensive efficiency, but unsurprisingly, they are 4th in tempo. This team runs and runs and runs, and they shoot a bunch of threes. 52% of their field goal attempts come from beyond the arc. That is the 12th highest mark in college basketball. They're only shooting 34% from three, which is only 145th, but they shoot so many threes. And when they don't shoot threes, they shoot really efficiently, 61.5% on their 2-point attempts. That is 31st in the country. The guard play is just unreal. They just are. This is the best backcourt that Gonzaga will face this year, almost assuredly. And that's with respect to a fully healthy Kentucky. That's with respect to what Donovan Dent and Sky Clark do at UCLA. And that's with respect to Jackson Shellstead and TK Simpkins at Oregon. Alabama's guard play is phenomenal. LaBaron Philon's averaging over 20 points per game, 6 assists, shooting 38% from three as a sophomore. He is tremendous at getting downhill and getting to the rim. Aden Holloway is averaging nearly 18 points, 3 assists. He's shooting 35% from three on nearly 9 3-point attempts per game. And then Houston Millett, former Pepperdine at Wave, averaging 10.5 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 35% from three on 5 attempts per game. Bama's also got the bigs. The bigs are not the most physical, imposing bigs that Gonzaga will face all year, but one thing they can do is space the floor, and that will stretch Gonzaga's defense and force Graham Ike and Braden Huff to defend away from the rim. Taylor Bull-Bowen averaging 12.5 points, 4 boards, 1.5 blocks, and shooting 37.5% from three on 4 attempts per game. Aiden Sherrell's averaging 9 points, 3 boards. He's shooting 50% from three. Granted, that is just 4 of 8. Looking at the Maryland Terrapins now, this game on Tuesday, 6:30 Pacific time, True TV, again at the MGM Garden Grand. The Terps are 4-1 on the year. 3 of their wins are against teams outside the top 240 at KenPom. One of their wins is against Marquette, and that was a true road W for Buzz Williams, who used to coach at Marquette, returned back to his alma mater, or his one of his first coaching jobs, and then beat Shaka Smart and the Golden Eagles. They are 69th currently at KenPom. Maryland's only loss was to Georgetown, a rivalry in the D.C. area. Georgetown, KenPom 70th. And Maryland 66th at KenPom. Adjusted offensive efficiency 76th. Their defense is 54th. Their tempo much much slower than Gonzaga's there at 186th. The big story for Maryland is the health of Pharrell Payne, and hopefully we'll have a better sense of that. We should have a better sense of that by Tuesday because we'll know whether he played in their first game on Monday against UNLV or not. Pharrell Payne's a 6'9" big man, averaged about 18 points, 6 boards, shooting 71% from the field before he went down with what looked like a horrifying injury. If you are squeamish, do not watch the video. If you are somebody who's morbidly curious about videos like this, maybe go check it out. I will say that it sounds like the injury was far less serious than it appeared. So if you do watch it, understand that what you are seeing maybe isn't as bad as it looked like it was, because there's a chance he does play in this game. And this injury happened not that long ago, and it looked really, really bad. He is a tremendous player. I will say this, Maryland without Pharrell Payne, very, very, very difficult for them to beat Gonzaga. Very difficult. If they do have Pharrell Payne, it might be a little bit easier because he is a big, very strong veteran guy who can impose his will a little bit on Graham Ike, better than most players are able to do. Nobody's been very good at stopping Graham, but Payne would have a better chance than most. Some familiar faces on this Maryland roster as well. Miles Rice, former Washington State guard, also was at Indiana, averaging 19-7, but that's not really an average. He just has only played in one game, and he had 19-7 in that game. Isaiah Watts, also a former Washington State guard, averaging about 6.5 points per game. Elijah Saunders from the Seattle area, spent some time at San Diego State, spent some time at Virginia, now at Maryland, averaging 10.5 points, 5.5 boards. And then Alex Alston, not playing much, only averaging 1.5 points in 9 minutes per game, but he's a true freshman for Maryland that Gonzaga pursued fairly heavily before he committed to the Terps. So another name that might be familiar to some of you who follow Gonzaga recruiting. And then got to mention Diggy Coit. Diggy Coit was a transfer from Kansas, didn't play much for the Jayhawks last year, but was a good mid-major scoring guard prior to that. And he looks like that player again in their game against Mount St. Mary's. Diggy Coit dropped 41, not a lot of 40-point games in college basketball. Very, very good to see somebody be able to do it. But Coit is a 5'10" guard, so I think Gonzaga will be able to slow him down. Certainly not expecting him to drop 40 on them, but certainly a high-level scorer to keep an eye on as well. Well, folks, will Gonzaga be a 2-0 team after Tuesday night? And if so, who might they face? What time might they play? Could they compete for a championship? We're going to talk about that, make some predictions for the rest of this tournament, all coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, college basketball, it's back, and I could not be more excited. The madness, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can sometimes feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices that jump at checkout. And that's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives that advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices without any of those surprise fees. What you see, folks, that's what you pay. So I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. And honestly, folks, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way that I have bought tickets. And if you haven't bought your tickets yet for UCLA Battle in Seattle, Climate Pledge Arena on December 13th, you can get seats at Game Time for just $93 a piece. And folks, they got a super deal right now. 2 tickets, Section 8, Row BB. Your feet are basically on the floor, and those tickets are only $238 a pop. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Folks, today's episode is also brought to you by Doer. I've always had trouble finding jeans that actually are comfortable enough for me to wear, and that's why I'm so excited to have my new pair from Doer. This local company has the most comfortable jeans, no matter what style and for any occasion, whether it's a quick trip to the grocery store or like myself, a night out to go see Wicked with my wife. You bet I'm going to be wearing those for that. Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, and they're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wash them, wear them more, and wash them less. Doer is also made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture to keep you cool and comfortable as the temperatures change. Doer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. In fact, they invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without you having to sacrifice style. So get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. doer.com/LockedOnSeattle. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're still talking about the Players Era Festival, the matchups, the intrigue, the excitement for college basketball to kick off Feast Week. It's going to be an absolute blast. Very excited that Gonzaga is a part of this event. We gave you a little preview of Alabama, Maryland. Again, we will give a much more thorough preview of the Bama game on Monday's show and then of the Maryland game on Tuesday's show as well. But what I want to do now is I want to look at the rest of this event. I've put down all of the games that are taking place on Monday and Tuesday that do not feature Gonzaga. So we're not going to talk about those two games. And I'm going to give you just a quick prediction for who I think is going to win each of those games. And then we're going to take a look at what that would mean. Which teams I have going 2-0, which teams I have going 0-2, which teams I have going 1-1, which is, of course, the majority of the teams, and then what that could mean for Gonzaga after Tuesday night's game against Maryland. So starting on Monday, I'll give you the game times. All of these are in Pacific time, and the games are on either TNT or True TV. And again, they're all either at the MGM Garden Grand Arena, which is where Gonzaga's two games are, or they're at the Michelob Ultra Arena, also in Las Vegas. Tipping things off on Monday, Rutgers taking on Tennessee at 10 a.m. Give me the Vols in that one. Rutgers wasn't very good last year when they had two of the top freshmen in the country. I don't think they're going to be any better this year under Coach Steve Pikiell. So, yeah, give me the Vols there. Creighton versus Baylor at 11 a.m. That's going to be a really fun game. Creighton hasn't found themselves yet. As Gonzaga fans know, we saw that game last week. Baylor, brand new roster, but I think they have a bit more talent. So give me the Bears to take down Creighton in that one. Kansas taking on Notre Dame. Not sure if Kansas superstar Darren Peterson is going to play or not, but either way, Kansas should be able to outlast the Fighting Irish. So give me Kansas in that one. St. John's versus Iowa State, two top-ranked teams. That's a really, really fun game, kind of an offense versus defense situation. I'm not all that high on St. John's. I think their backcourt really concerns me, and St. John or in Iowa State with Tamin Lipsey and Nate Heisey and the way he's played. I think the Cyclones are going to win this one. I think that's going to be a bit of an upset to most people, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Cyclones pulling off a W there. Houston versus Syracuse. Yeah, give me the Cougs in that one. Don't trust this Syracuse team, and Houston's been playing phenomenal as of late. Auburn versus Oregon. The Ducks haven't looked very good. They barely beat Hawaii. They barely beat Rice. But neither has Auburn. Auburn had a nice close game against Houston. So I think Auburn's a bit of a better team if they're fully healthy, which is a question at this point. So give me the Tigers to take down the Ducks in that one. Michigan versus San Diego State. San Diego State lost to Troy in overtime. Was not a pretty performance for the Aztecs. Michigan hasn't looked great either, but give me the Wolverines in that one. And then UNLV versus Maryland. I do think Maryland wins their first game in the Players Era Festival, and I think they'll take one from Josh Pastner and the Runnin' Rebels. On Tuesday, we got Rutgers versus Notre Dame. That's an ugly morning game at 10 a.m. Give me Notre Dame in that one. Iowa State versus Creighton. Give me the Cyclones again, picking up another W against a Big East team. That would put Creighton down at 0-2 in this event. That game at 11 a.m. Kansas versus Syracuse. This game at 12:30. Again, another win for Kansas. Even without Darren Peterson, I think Kansas could potentially win both these games. This was a nice, kind of a friendly draw for the Jayhawks in this event. St. John's versus Baylor. Man, that's another really fun game. Give me the Johnnies in this one. I think they can get a W here, especially if they're coming off a loss to Iowa State. I think they're going to turn around and get a win over the Bears. Houston versus Tennessee. That might be the second best game of this entire tournament behind Gonzaga, Bama. Give me Houston to win this one, though. Tennessee's a talented team, but Houston just looks like a freight train right now. Michigan versus Auburn. Again, I don't feel great about Michigan, but I think against San Diego State and Auburn, I feel like Michigan might end up 2-0 in this event, even if their guard play is suspect, to say the least. Oregon versus San Diego State, rematch of last year's championship game. Give me the Ducks again. I'm worried about San Diego State after that loss to Troy, even though Troy, by the way, went into triple overtime against USC on Thursday night. UNLV, Alabama. Yeah, give me the Crimson Tide, definitely going to win that one. So what that means, if my predictions are correct, which they assuredly are not entirely, but let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say that they are. I would have 5 2-0 teams. Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, all three in the Big 12, mind you, Michigan, and Gonzaga. I didn't give you my predictions, but yeah, I think the Zags are going to win both these games. Alabama is going to be tougher than Maryland, but give me the Zags going 2-0. So if those are your 5-2-0 teams, then Gonzaga's hopefully, ideally, going to match up with one of those other teams. And again, it's going to be based on a variety of factors. And this is what's frustrating is I think Gonzaga could beat Maryland by 15 points, but if they beat Bama by 3, they have an 18-point differential. They're going to score a lot of points. We know that. But is that enough for them? It feels very possible that Kansas outscores their 2 opponents by more than that. Is that fair? Is it fair for it to be Houston, Kansas in the championship when Gonzaga beat better teams? I don't necessarily think so. Now, I don't think they would do Houston, Kansas in the championship. But again, I would be furious if I was Bill Self and I felt like I deserved to be in that championship game, and I got bumped because Houston happens to be the clear front runner. Houston wins their 2 games by 40. They get an automatic spot in the championship game, and you tell me now Kansas and Iowa State can't be in that championship game? And they haven't confirmed that they're going to make the rule that way, I should clarify, but it stands to reason that they will try to avoid conference matchups where they can. But if it's at the expense of you getting to compete for $1 million, that's going to be pretty upsetting. So again, really curious how they're going to do this. I think if obviously Gonzaga needs to beat Bama, but if Gonzaga beats Bama and they beat Maryland, pretty good chance that they are in the championship. The championship game, by the way, is at 9:30 Pacific time on Wednesday. The third place game is at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. All the other games not determined. So if Gonzaga is not in one of those 2 games, if they go 1-1, we don't know what time they're going to play. Probably earlier on Wednesday. There are a few games that are going to take place on Thanksgiving as well. So we will have to wait until 9 p.m. or later on Tuesday to have a better sense of when that game is going to take place on Wednesday/Thursday. So potential matchups for Gonzaga, again, it's really any of these teams, but some of the ones that would be the most exciting from a narrative perspective, Gonzaga-Houston rematch of the round of 32 game last year. Obviously, a chance to compete against Isaiah Harwell, a recruit who picked Houston after being heavily recruited by Gonzaga for many, many months. So that would be, and Kingston Flemings as well, who's played phenomenal for Houston. Gonzaga started recruiting him when they realized that Isaiah Harwell was going to go to Houston, and then Houston actually scooped up Kingston Flemings as well. Gonzaga versus Iowa State would be a super fun matchup. I really like this Cyclones team. There's some synergy there. They have Joshua Jefferson, who used to be at St. Mary's. Also Blake Buchanan, who's from Coeur d'Alene, that was pursued by Gonzaga out of high school before he went to Virginia, and then now is at Iowa State. Gonzaga versus Kansas, obviously always fun to play a blue blood, to get a chance to compete against a team like that. Rematch of a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament. Gonzaga versus Michigan would be fun. I think Michigan is a team that their guards are not very good, so Gonzaga would have an advantage there, but their bigs are really good, and that would challenge Gonzaga in a lot of ways. I think that would be a good game for Gonzaga in terms of getting them better. And I think that is something you ultimately want out of this tournament. Gonzaga is not going to face a lot of bigs the way that Aden Mara is, an incredibly talented shot blocker, over 7 feet tall. It would be a good test for Gonzaga's front court if they matched up with Michigan. So too would St. John's. St. John's, Zuby Ejiofor is probably the best center in college basketball. It's him and Graham Ike. Those are the top 2 guys. It's not close. And Zuby is a monster on both ends of the floor. But St. John's also has Dylan Mitchell and Bryce Hopkins. 3 really good, big kind of power forward center type players. Would be a challenge for Gonzaga in a good way. But I think Gonzaga's guards better than St. John's, better than Michigan, maybe enough to get them W's over either of those teams. Well, folks, we're going to talk more about this tournament on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and probably on Thursday's show as well next week. It's going to be a huge talking point, but wanted to get you a nice little primer about the event here heading into your weekend. We're actually going to close out the show, bringing back a popular off-season series, looking at the best Mark Few era Zags today from Asia, South America, and Australia. Got 4 players to talk about, all that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, college basketball and the NBA are back, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of a game or if you just want to ride out the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to predicting those fourth quarter comebacks. And you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's the one making that late push. Since we've been talking Players Era Festival, Gonzaga plus 500 to be your champion. The only team with better odds than Gonzaga is Houston at plus 310. So if you like Gonzaga's odds, Now's a great time to head to FanDuel because right now FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are closing out the show and the week, bringing back a popular off-season segment where we talked about the best Mark Few era Zags from various states and countries. We did the best Mark Few era Zags from Canada, the best Mark Few era Zags from Western Europe, Eastern Europe, France. We did, I think, about 15 different states, the best from Washington, the best from Oregon, the best from California, from Texas, from Colorado, etc., etc. And we came very close to finishing off this project. There was like 2 or 3 kind of combined places that we didn't really talk about, like a bunch of states in the Midwest that didn't get covered and a handful of other places. And so I figured, well, when we get chances in the regular season, we got to find a way to try to get this all polished off. So today felt like a good opportunity as we close out the week to take a look at basically the rest of the international Zags. Because we talked Canada, we talked France, we talked Western Europe, that's Germany, Spain, and Italy, and we talked Eastern Europe, Lithuania, and Russia, and other places out there. And so it felt like, hey, let's take a look at kind of the rest of those places. 4 total Zags that we're going to talk about today from Asian countries, from Australian countries, from South American countries. So again, only 4 total players to talk about here. We got them in the order that I have them in. I don't think there's going to be much debate about the order here, maybe at the very top, but that is where we're going to start with who else but Rui Hachimura. Rui from Toyama, Japan, a tremendous, one of the most gifted Asian basketball players really that we have ever seen historically. And Gonzaga helped put him on the map. He spent 3 years with the program from 2016 to 2019, played 102 games in a Gonzaga uniform, started just 39 of them. For his career, averaged about 12 points, 4.5 boards, 59.5% effective field goal rate in about 20 minutes per game. But again, that doesn't really tell the full picture for Rui because he barely played as a freshman on that championship, the championship runner-up team that went to that game against North Carolina in the finals. And then he played more as a sophomore, but still not a ton. And then he just completely, fully broke out as a junior, was an All-American consensus. He was first-team All-American on 5 of the 6 different lists, and then a second-teamer once. That season, he averaged just under 20 points per game, 6.5 boards, 1.5 assists, 61% on 2-pointers, 42% from 3. Again, consensus All-American, WCC Player of the Year. He was NCAA All-Region team. He was a 2-time WCC first-teamer. He made it as well as a sophomore. Just a tremendous, extraordinarily talented player. That junior season for him, he was just a bucket. He could score at the rim. He had a phenomenal mid-range game. You all remember that game-winning shot against Washington at Washington. Just a nice little 15-footer, just absolute butter from Rui in that game. Throughout that entire season, frankly, he was the 9th overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft by the Washington Wizards, is now with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he's averaging over 15 points per game. His performance is going to tick down a little bit now that LeBron is finally healthy for the Lakers, but he has been a phenomenal player for the Lakers. He's also just an icon, a Japanese basketball icon, an Olympian, represented his country in Tokyo in the 2020 Olympics. Like, just a phenomenal player and an iconic figure in Japanese and Asian basketball. Very happy that Gonzaga helped shepherd his fame, by bringing him in as a high schooler. Next up is, again, going halfway across the world here to finish these up. We're talking about JP Batista from Olinda, Brazil. Spent 2 years at Gonzaga, 2004 through 2006. Previously, he'd been at Western Nebraska Community College and Barton County Community College. He played 62 games in a Gonzaga uniform, averaged 16 points, 8 rebounds, a little over an assist, 59.5% from the field. He was the 2005 WCC Rookie of the Year. He was in the 2006 All-WCC team. He was twice named to the All-WCC tournament team in his senior season, his final year in Spokane, the 05-06 season. Obviously, that year was totally focused on Adam Morrison and his 28 points per game and his competition with J.J. Redick to be the Wooden Award winner. But Batista was great that year. He averaged over 19 points per game, 9.5 rebounds, 59% from the field. Just a phenomenal player who got incredibly overshadowed by Adam Morrison. He led the WCC in 2-point field goal percentage in his first year. He led them in effective field goal percentage and overall field goal percentage. His senior year, he had a very lengthy professional career all over the world, returned to Gonzaga as a graduate student for a couple of years on staff with the men's team, and now he is currently on staff with the women's basketball team as a strength and conditioning coach. Very cool to have JP back in Spokane working with the team. It's a bit of a surprise that JP and his incredible performance is not number one out of this group, but hard to pick against the All-American in Rui. But man, two very incredible international players that we hadn't gotten a chance to talk about yet through this series. Two more guys to talk about here. Next up is another player from an Asian country. That is Jun-Suk Yo from Seoul, South Korea. Yo spent 2.5 years really at Gonzaga, previously played at college in Korea. He came to Gonzaga in the middle of the 22-23 season at the semester break. Didn't play that year, and then played for Gonzaga in 24 and 25. Played 39 games for Gonzaga in those two seasons. Averaged about 2 points, 1 rebound in about 6 minutes per game. His first year, he played 25 games, played about 7 minutes per game, averaged 2.5 points and 1.5 rebounds. And then his second year, his playing time dropped. He only appeared in 14 games that year, only played 4 minutes per game in those 14 games, and then transferred. And not a huge shock. You saw the potential. You could tell it was there, but he'd never carved out playing time on incredibly talented rosters with players like Ben Gregg and Anton Watson and Michael Ajayi last year, and just many other really talented players in front of him at the 4-3 spots. And so he ends up hitting the transfer portal. He goes to Seattle U, a really, really good fit for him. There's a lot of other Asian players on Seattle U's roster. It's the very vibrant Asian community in Seattle and at Seattle U, and he's getting the opportunity to play. I mean, he's playing like 30 minutes per game, started all 4 games for the Red Hawks, and he's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and about 2 assists per game, 68.5% on his 2-point attempts. It is phenomenal. I am so happy. Many of you know I'm also a Seattle U alumni, so I am very happy to see June and Seattle U succeeding, but also June is just one of the easiest players to root for, so it's really cool to see him getting to still compete at a high level in Division I basketball, and to do so at a school that I care about is just even better for me personally. Final player on the list here is Callum McLeod. Callum McLeod from New Zealand. So I said Australia because there aren't actually any Australian Zags. St. Mary's and now Portland seem to be gobbling up all of the Australian basketball players, but New Zealand is kind of under. I'm not going to get into a geography lesson here because it's not my area of expertise, but we're going to go ahead and say that New Zealand is kind of part of Australia, Asia, somewhere in there. So Callum McLeod gets his flowers here. 7'1" big man, only played in 9 games for Gonzaga. So if you don't recognize the name, that's not entirely surprising. It was 9 games way back in the 2004-2005 season, 15 total minutes, scored 8 points with 2 rebounds on 4 of 7 shooting, played a year of junior college after that, and then came back to the D1 level to play at Valpo, currently being coached by former Gonzaga assistant coach Roger Powell, by the way. He played 2 years at Valpo. McLeod did average about 4 points, 2 rebounds while there, then had a brief pro career, and that was that for McLeod. 7'1" big man, though, so certainly understand why Gonzaga was invested in him, but just never really worked out for him in a Gonzaga uniform. It's going to wrap it up for me today and for this week. Again, hopefully we'll get a couple more of these sprinkled in throughout the next couple of weeks, especially in those lull periods in December where Gonzaga doesn't have many games before conference play gets going. Folks, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Get some rest. Get ready to roll because it is going to be a bunch of really high-level basketball Monday, Tuesday, and then either Wednesday or Thursday for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Again, we'll have big-time previews for those matchups coming your way early next week. Thanks again. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And, of course, as always, go Zags.